Can't believe we've already gotten here this season, but it's another Groundhog Day of Misery for the New York Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. And today's episode of Locked On Mets, what else is there to talk about but the Mets' absolutely disgustingly brutal lineup that cannot score any runs? We've had a running bit on this show for some time, and that is the Groundhog Day of Misery, which is the cold open of the show. When the Mets get in a rut like this, we can just play the same cold open over and over again, the exact same one, and we just let it play. I think we did it actually the first time in 2024, and then it turned into a great season. So maybe that's this year. 2025, once we got into June and July, I believe it was, and there started to be some rough stretches, yeah, we played the Groundhog Day of Misery Open. I can't believe I just recorded a Groundhog Day of Misery Open on April 14th. And today's show, what do I even comment on at this point? Do I go inning by inning by inning? There was nothing entertaining about this game. I hope you all went to sleep and didn't stay up for it. Because, yes, I mean, sure, we will spend a little bit of time talking about David Peterson because he gave up 4 runs, but there was some things to like about Peterson in a start where he gave up 4. There's nothing to like about this lineup right now. Absolutely nothing. 3 hits, 0 walks. Funny enough, only 2 strikeouts. And so, yeah, if you want to go through every single, out and say, oh, that was a hard hit out. That was a hard hit out. That was a hard hit out. Are they just the unluckiest team of all time? I don't think so. I mean, granted, there were some good plays. Like I'm scrolling through the highlights right now as I'm going through each inning. And yeah, Miguel Rojas makes a diving stop in the second. Francisco Alvarez flies out. That ball wasn't hit that hard. Tyrone Taylor lined out to the third baseman. I don't know. Marcus Semien had an exit velocity of 1 and 2 and flew out to the center fielder. So yeah, if you want to go through and you want to play the optimistic angle, but I don't know how much optimism I have left in me to try to find any silver lining in what that game was for the Mets offense. Justin Robleski just went out there and absolutely carved. Absolutely carved. He throws really hard. He's got a good slider, and he just attacked his zone, let those guys hit the ball to where his fielders were. Dodgers played great defense, and it was a clinic. Justin Robleski threw 90 pitches to get through 8 innings, a Maddox. And the Mets, they said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We got to rush Tommy Pham up. We got to rush Tommy Pham up because Justin Robleski's on the mound, and he's better against lefties instead of righties. So we want to go a whole right-handed lineup. That's going to do it. That's going to really get to him. There's no way that this is going to blow up in our face. So let's bench Carson Bench. Let's bench Brett Baty. And who knows if those guys would have done anything different. But the intent of, all right, Tommy Pham and Tyrone Taylor completing the outfield with Luis Robert, that's going to do it. That's going to change things. Those guys were 0 for 6. Didn't change anything. Polanco got a hit. Alvarez got a hit. Semien got a hit. There's your recap of the Mets lineup. And I'd venture to guess none of them came in the same inning. I don't believe they did because, well, they definitely did because the Mets didn't have a single runner in scoring position all game. Not one. Not one. I mean, look, Robleski is a good young arm. Don't get me wrong. And he did, pitch a great game. But I'm just, you can't make up how bad this lineup has been. It's just been brutal. And Juan Soto's a great hitter. Juan Soto will help a lot. Juan Soto helps every hitter in the lineup because he takes so much pressure off everybody, particularly the guy that's hitting in front of him and the guy that's hitting behind him. But Juan Soto playing on an MVP level with what's around him would do nothing. This team would still be awful because you're running out of lineup right now where tonight's starting lineup, you had two guys who are having good offensive seasons, Luis Robert and Francisco Alvarez. Every other guy in this lineup has been brutal this year. Lindor, brutal. Polanco, brutal. Vientos had a good series in San Francisco. Since then, brutal. Bichette, brutal. I feel like I have used the word brutal more times in the past 6 days with the losing streak than I maybe used in 8 years on this podcast, 8 seasons, whatever it's been. Jeez. I mean, it has just been so bad. And like, what am I telling you that you don't know? You look at the box score and you can see it. Just awful, awful baseball. And I don't know, something about the rush to get Tommy Pham up, that Tommy Pham was going to get on his white horse and save the day, and he goes 0 for 3 with a strikeout. Because guess what? He hasn't seen pitching above low A. He went down to the Mets complex in St. Lucie. He faced off against their minor leaguers who aren't in action yet. So you're talking about complex league arms. And then he went up against low A pitching for 5 games. And the Mets thought, yeah, he's better than what we got. I'd venture to guess that Brett Baty might have given you better at bats than Tommy Pham did in this game. Here's another one. Is there a world where Ronnie Mauricio is actually swinging a good bat right-handed? Might have given you better at bats than Tommy Pham. Granted, doesn't really work positionally for this team to have done that. But I mean, I'm just throwing out there the fact that the genius move of, okay, well, Tommy Pham's going to fix it. That's not to say that to blame this loss on it, but it's just like the Mets are grasping for straws, and they're not even great straws. Look, I liked watching Tommy Pham's presser today. I liked hearing that guy talk. He's a character. He's a professional. He's a 38-year-old who is probably one of the most athletic 38-year-olds on the planet. And maybe he will be good for the Mets because his best run of baseball over the past 5 years was in a Mets uniform. And so maybe that comes again. Maybe Tommy Pham holds down left field until Soto comes back, and then he's playing a bunch of right, and Carson Bench gets set down. I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. Maybe the Pham edition is going to be great. But I also wonder if Tommy Pham would be better suited to come into the big leagues after more than 5 games in low A. But that's just how desperate this team was. And with a fresh face that's supposed to reinvigorate the lineup, you muster 3 hits? 3 hits and no walks. I get he was pounding the strike zone. There's only so much you can do. But, I mean, just an awful game for this Mets lineup. What I want to talk about next, and we will spend a segment on David Peterson at the very end. I want to talk about the buzzwords, the ones we heard all offseason. Run prevention. Maybe run production should have been factored in. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, and wondering if they're ever really going to get to your situation. But this year, you're going to get a major upgrade with Intuit TurboTax, which now has in-person locations nationwide. So you can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert will work to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's a relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing that your taxes are being handled the right way. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you. That's turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 17,000 subscribers. Now, anyone who has listened to this show for a little bit of time knows that I am unapologetically a David Stearns guy. I look at David Stearns' resume, what he did with the Brewers, building that into one of the best organizations, one of the best run franchises in baseball for a small market team, to have developed players the way they have, to have seen them consistently win. And Stearns was the architect. So taking that into account, taking into account the fact that his first year with the New York Mets, they went to Game 6 of the NLCS. And if you think that David Stearns played zero part in that, then you are just so locked into your hatred of the guy that you're delusional. Because the guy that was making all the decisions had something to do with them going to Game 6 of the NLCS. But then there was last year, a brutal season. And then there was this offseason. And not that I completely doubted David Stearns, and I still haven't. I still think he's a great executive. I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid. But there's finally a little bit of a glimmer of doubt, just a little bit. And it started with the offseason plan. I didn't come into the offseason expecting the Mets to dump Brandon Nimmo. That one took me, completely, by surprise. It was out of left field, like Nimmo was. Now, once the trade was made, go back and listen to my take on it. I was very concerned about Marcus Semien, the hitter, but I was able to justify why the Mets made the move. Brandon Nimmo on that contract, if you could have taken one contract off the Mets books at the time, it would have been Nimmo's, because there's injury risk. It's a guy in his 30s, and while I thought that he was a solid enough defensive left fielder, you could make the case that opened the door to go out and get a center fielder like Luis Robert and have Carson Bench be a big part of the 2026 Mets. And that should have improved the outfield defense significantly. So I got that. I understood that. I was able to come to terms with that. Then Edwin Diaz goes to the Dodgers. All right. I was able to rationalize it. I was able to come to terms with it. I was able to look at the contract that Devin Williams got, look at the contract that Edwin Diaz got, and say, yeah, I think the Mets got a better deal. And I felt like Devin Williams could perform the job as the Mets closer as well as Edwin Diaz did. And so far, so good in that regard. Then came the Pete Alonso decision. I didn't like that one too much. Didn't like it then. Didn't really like it now, or don't really like it now. But again, I was able to start to wrap my head around it. All right, you got Bichette. You didn't get nobody. You tried to get Kyle Tucker. That was the goal. And if you got Kyle Tucker is a better player than Pete Alonso. A better hitter than Pete Alonso. Maybe not a better slugger, but still. And look, Kyle Tucker is struggling on his new contract too. Pete Alonso is struggling on his new contract. There is something to be said about going to a new place on a big deal and trying to perform. And maybe that's what we're seeing with Bichette. Maybe that's what we're seeing with Polanco. Not necessarily with Semien. He's a trade, and I just think it's general decline there. And Robert's been amazing with the change of scenery. So it's case by case. But, yeah, at the time, I wasn't for it. I wasn't supporting it. And I said I would have given Alonso what he got from the Orioles. Now, Pete Alonso on the New York Mets right now and Brandon Nimmo's on the Mets right now, is this a completely different season? I don't know. I really don't. Those guys could have got swept up in the slump just as much as Polanco and Semien and anybody else, has up to this point. Bench, Baty, you name it. But when you stress run prevention and go through these other means of getting your run production, if your lineup doesn't hit all year, if this becomes a problem that plagues the Mets for more than just a month, it's not just a brutal month of April and then Soto comes back and the weather gets hot and things start rolling. If this prolongs, if this turns into a disaster of a season, the optics of what they did is going to be brutal. And David Stearns is going to get a lot of blowback. He already is. Now, I appreciate that David Stearns had the courage of his convictions, said goodbye to all these fan favorites to build the team in his image, what he believed was going to be the best version of the New York Mets. That's what he did. And that's what he should do. A guy with his resume who was brought in to do the job deserves all of the free reign to do the job. So this is not even me second guessing David Stearns right now. This is just me acknowledging that if this continues the way it has, David Stearns is going to be the most hated man in New York, particularly amongst Mets fans. And every single Pete Alonso home run and Brandon Nimmo home run and Jeff McNeil double, every single one of those knocks that is happening while Polanco is striking out or happening while Bo Bichette is struggling with runners in scoring position for the first time in his career. It's just going to compound and compound and compound. So this team that he built better start to perform. And I don't think it can be this bad for this long because you'd be talking about a historically awful lineup, and they have too many good hitters. Bo Bichette is not going to hit 225, you would think. Francisco Lindor is not going to hit a $176 and not have any RBIs all season. But he's very close to 20 games without an RBI. And the list goes on and on and on. Run production. That's what the Mets got to focus on right now. And a little tough to do that when you're going to be going up against Yoshinobu, Yamamoto, and Shohei Ohtani over the next 48 hours. Good luck. This 6-game losing streak, you might snap your fingers and it could be an 8-game losing streak. And that's going to be a nice big hole that this team's got to climb their way out of. Can they do it? Of course. It's a long year. I don't think the Mets are going to turn into the worst team in baseball and lose 100 games. I really don't. But could they have a season where they never pull themselves out of it? Could they be what the Braves were last year, where it just never quite gelled? Could be. And I'd say, could they be what the Mets were last year? But the Mets were awesome at the beginning of the season, so it's not a fair comparison. They were bad at the end. Maybe this is the mode. Maybe if you can only have one good half season, let it be the second half. But threading the needle the way they did in 2024, I mean, it took absolutely Herculean effort by Francisco Lindor to get that team to the playoffs. Not to say he doesn't have that in him. Not to say Juan Soto doesn't have that in him. They certainly can. That 1-2 punch could gel. Francisco Lindor can make up for lost time, get back to his career averages, which would mean, based on how he started this season, 5.5 months of really good baseball potentially. I think it's going to be fine. But right now, at this moment, as a Mets fan, you're driving into work after reading the box score and you woke up this morning, you tuned in to Locked On Mets to hear what Ryan has to say about it. It sucks. It just does. And I don't have anything else to say about the lineup because I'll just continue repeating myself. So what we're going to do in the final segment, we're going to talk about David Peterson. I thought there was some encouraging signs in his start, so we're going to go through that to close out the show. If you ever open up your bank account and thought, where did all my money go? Well, you're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast. That's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. It tracks all your subscriptions in one spot so you can cancel the ones you don't need with just a few taps. It automatically categorizes your spending so you can actually see where your money is going. You can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of upcoming bills. It just makes everything feel a little more organized and gives you a clearer picture of your finances day to day. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now it's time to take it up a level and go at 3. Join the Everyday Club. You're going to lock the Mets without the interruptions. You get access to our Discord. We can chat to other Mets fans. You also get access to a merch shop. If you want to be one of our Everyday Club members, go to the link in the episode description or go to lockedonmets.supercast.com. If you use the promo code FINALLY, you're going to get your first month for free. Again, that's lockedonmets.supercast.com and use that promo code FINALLY. Now, David Peterson could not have started off worse on Monday night. First batter he faces, hit Shohei Ohtani with a pitch. He was ahead 0-2, and he just drills him in the shoulder. Maybe? Okay, I'm not going to say it. I will say it. You can't start it and then not go through with it. You had to have the thought in your mind when he gets drilled on his shoulder. And you wonder, will he be good to pitch in 2 days? You had to think it. You had to. At least I did. But regardless, Ohtani was fine. Kyle Tucker then drew a walk. Then Will Smith got a base hit. Run scores. Then Teoscar Hernandez draws a walk. So I got the bases juice. A run's already in. You haven't recorded it out. And who's stepping up to the plate? It's Freddie Freeman. Luckily, David Peterson owns Freddie Freeman, and he struck him out. Then you got Andy Pajes, the hottest hitter in baseball. David Peterson struck him out. Then you got Max Muncy, another tough hitter who can leave the yard with one swing. Peterson struck him out. All of that came after a mound visit by Justin Willard. And whatever he said clearly worked. That took a lot of grit for Peterson to get through that inning. He deserved better from his lineup. Granted, he did falter in the third. That was after a second inning where he struck out 2 of the 3 batters. So there was a run there where he struck out 5 of 6 hitters. Get to the third inning. Walks will kill you. Issues a leadoff walk to Kyle Tucker. Will Smith hit one on a rope just right at Luis Robert. He then walked Teoscar Hernandez. Here comes Freddie. Ground ball. That was so close to being a double play. Remember that play the other day where Francisco Lindor went to the left side of the bag on a play where he should have been covering? Well, this one, Marcus Semien couldn't get to it. And Francisco Lindor did. Semien got to the bag. They got a force out there. But on the transfer, he couldn't pull it out. He might have had a chance to throw out the slow-moving Freddie Freeman. Fortunately, he doesn't pull off that double play, Semien. And then here, and I will say, not like he absolutely should have. That's a ridiculously tough play to be trying to field the ground ball, almost catch it over your shoulder, touch the bag, turn the opposite direction, make a throw. I mean, that's as hard of a play as a second baseman could possibly make. So definitely not knocking Semien's defense on that. But because that play was not made, Andy Pajes gets another crack at Peterson with runners on, and he makes him pay. It's a 3-run homer. Peterson falls behind, 2-0, tries to steal a strike on a curveball, and Pajes covers it, and it was 4-0 Dodgers. But then Peterson struck out Max Muncy. He went back out for the next inning, the fourth, gave up a double to Miguel Rojas, went through Ohtani and Kyle Tucker, got through that without giving up a run, went right back out for the fifth inning, gave up another 1-out double and a base hit to Freddie Freeman, still was able to get out of it. Pajes did hit one on a rope. I mean, 109, 0.2 miles per hour off the bat, but it was right at Lindor, who made a nice catch at it. And then he was able to strike out Muncy again. So you look at Peterson's day, yes, he gives up 4 runs. Not a great start. His ERA is 6.41. But the fact that he had that first inning, which was as awful as it was, not retiring out to the first 4 batters, and that he was able to still find his way through that inning, and he got you through 5 against that Dodgers lineup, I actually think it deserves to be commended, the start that he had. Not that we should be throwing him a parade or a party, but we certainly should be saying David Peterson has to be removed from this rotation. Give him some time to figure this out. I thought this was a step in the right direction. I think you do have to give him credit. The last 2 starts haven't been great, and he still has found his way through 5 innings. So he's not hurting you the next day. And, not that should be the bar for what you want out of him at starter, but it's good enough to say, all right, let's see what he does with another start. Struck out 7. And you look at some of the pitches that he had this game and the way the batters were, trying to swing at some of these breaking balls and swinging through a lot of them. I mean, you combine his slider and his curveball, he got 17 swings, 11 whiffs, which is a whiff percentage well over 65%. So, I mean, that's really good stuff on those pitches. He clearly, had his breaking stuff dialed. Now, the walks killed him, certainly. And, he has to rein those in. You can't be walking 4 batters, especially when you have hitters in this lineup that are so dangerous or one swing will kill you. If he doesn't walk those batters when Pages takes him deep, it's a different ballgame. That's maybe 2-0. Now the Mets didn't score, so it doesn't matter. But I thought this was potentially a step in the right direction for Peterson in a tough environment. It's a tough lineup. The fact that he got through 5, the fact that he made it out of that first inning with 1 run allowed, I think this showed a lot of guts and does give you some hope that he can start to string some better outings together after this one, if he can build off of it a little bit. Now, Craig Kimbrell came out for the 6th. He was able to put up a 0, did give up a hit, but he still has a 0 ERA on the year, 2 solid outings so far. So far, so good on Kimbrell. And today you saw the first of what I think is going to start to be a little bit of a series of roster moves in this bullpen, because Joey Gerber did the job. He was actually great to finish off that game, but he threw, let's see here, 47 pitches. So if I had to guess, Joey Gerber is going to be sent back to Syracuse and Austin Warren's going to replace him on Tuesday, because that's just how it works. The Mets haven't been doing that this year. They stuck with the same bullpen for the first couple of weeks. But now that Lovelady and Luis Garcia are gone, they have some roster room to play with. And so I think Joey Gerber is probably going to be a casualty. Doesn't deserve it. He struck out 5 in those 2 innings. Looked really good. Highlight leg kick. Liked what I saw. But sometimes you do such a good job that you get sent down to the minor leagues for your troubles. And I think that's probably what's going to happen here for Joey Gerber. Although the Mets do have a deep enough bullpen right now with the guys that haven't pitched lately, when you have Tobias Myers that can probably give you length on Tuesday, and you have Nolan McClain going, where theoretically, if you did like what you saw enough, you could give Gerber a couple days. But it's just, for a guy like Gerber on a roster like this, you don't usually afford them 3 days of rest or 2 days of rest in a big league bullpen. You just send them down to Syracuse and you say, hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks, maybe. And you kind of go about it like that. So that's where I think that probably goes. But still a nice first impression there. And again, Craig Kimbrell looked pretty solid. So that was the Mets pitching in this one. Good. Certainly the one swing of Pages really made Peterson's day look a lot worse. But again, to get through that first inning, to work around the traffic that he had, it was, again, I think a positive step in the right direction, even with the runs that he allowed. It's not the reason the Mets lost this game. They lost this game because they couldn't hit. So you give Peterson a break on this one. You see what he does the next time when he has maybe a little bit of a better matchup for him. He might have some more success. So that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. You got Nolan McClain going up against Yoshinobu Yamamoto. That is a pitching matchup I would usually tell you that you should stay up for. But the way this team's playing, I don't know if I could actually advise that. I want people to come after me for saying, well, you told me to stay up. I got work in the morning. I stayed up for it. And Nolan McClain pitched a gem, but the Mets never scored. I don't want to put that on you. So the good news is you'll have a show in the morning when you're driving to work, Locked On Mets, where I'll have you covered. So I appreciate you all for tuning in today. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network.